Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin. I actually have worked with almost every single one of you before, so although you may not have seen my face, now you have. We've all read each other's work, um, learned about each other's lives, so I'm really excited to see all of you again. And I've also worked with our professor, Jeffrey, in the short story class, and he's amazing if you haven't had him, so that's going to be really fun. I came to University College a year and a half ago. This is my last quarter before my capstone project, so I'm sorry to see everybody go because I probably won't be working with many of you again. Hopefully, we can all stay in touch and continue, reading each other's work and all that sort of stuff. I'm excited for the novella. Novella has always confused me. Like the difference between a long short story or a short novel and where like novella comes in. I've learned a couple things recently, particularly in a class that I took that was literary genres, and of course we studied all of those, and came across some really cool stuff. Like when we were reading McEwen, I didn't realize, that um, Albert Camus' *The Stranger* would be considered a novella. That's one of my favorite things that I've experienced in this course. I actually went and read it in French after I read it in English, and it was even better. And some of the other things that he mentions in his, assessment of the novella and what is classified as a novella really makes me understand kind of the parameters. So that helped a lot. But there's a lot of stuff in there that, I didn't realize would be considered a novella, like The Heart of Darkness and L'Étranger, of course. And one of my favorite pieces of work, which I actually consider to be a long short story, but I guess is a novella, is by Henry James, and it's The Turn of the Screw. I have a Nook, so I don't usually have books. I keep ones that are important to me, ones that, could be signed by authors or that I'm going to read 1,000 times or that have some sort of significance, sentimental value or whatever. But I actually happen to have The Turn of the Screw because it's awesome. And Henry James is awesome. And, McEwen also did mention James Joyce and the Dead. I've read that quite a few times in both of my degrees. And it's a really good one, too, although I would have considered that a short story as well. So it's interesting to see kind of the lines that are drawn with the novella, and I like that it's a little bit more you can pursue than a short story, and it's a little bit less intense to write than a novel. So I'm really excited to explore the novella. I already have an idea in mind. Hopefully it works out. We'll see when we try my first excerpt and see how it goes. And I'm just going to read you a little bit of The Turn of the Screw. I don't know if you guys have ever read it. It's one of the first ghost stories I've ever read. I probably it's cool because we don't know if it's a ghost story. It's like a psychological suspense type of thing too, which I like. And it's out of Henry James's wheelhouse. It's not, he didn't write a lot like this. But I think he's an amazing writer. So when he wrote a ghost story, I was all in. I read it when I was pretty young, probably maybe middle school, maybe a little bit younger even. So it was a little confusing then, but I've read it quite a few times since, and it's awesome. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of one of my favorite parts. There was a Sunday to get on, when it rained with such force and for so many hours that there could be no procession to church, in consequence of which, as the day declined, I had arranged with Mrs. Gross that, should the evening show improvement, we would attend together the late service. The rain happily stopped, and I prepared for our walk, which, through the park and by the good road to the village, would be a matter of 25 minutes. Coming downstairs to meet my colleague in the hall, I remembered a pair of gloves that had required 3 stitches, and that had received them, with a publicity perhaps not edifying, while I sat with the children at their tea served on Sundays, by exception, in that cold, clean temple of mahogany and brass, the grown-up dining room. The gloves had been dropped there, and I turned in to recover them. The day was gray enough, but the afternoon light still lingered, and it enabled me, on crossing the threshold, not only to recognize on a chair near the wide window, then closed, the articles I wanted, but to become aware of a person on the other side of the window and looking straight in. One step into the room had sufficed. My vision was instantaneous. It was all there. The person looking straight in was the person who had already appeared to me. He appeared thus again with, I won't say greater distinctness, for that was impossible, but with a nearness that represented a forward stride in our intercourse, and made me, as I met him, catch my breath and turn cold. He was the same. He was the same and seen this time as he had been seen before, from the waist up, The window, though the dining room was on the ground floor, not going down to the terrace on which he stood. His face was close to the glass, yet the effect of this better view was, strangely, just to show me how intense the former had been. He remained but a few seconds, long enough to convince me he also saw and recognized. But it was as if I had been looking at him for years and had known him always. Something, however, happened this time that had not happened before. His stare into my face through the glass and across the room was as deep and hard as then, but it quitted me for a moment during which I could still watch it, see it fix successively several other things. On the spot there came to me the added shock of a certitude that it was not for me he had come. He had come for someone else. The flash of this knowledge, for it was knowledge in the midst of dread, produced in me the most extraordinary effect, staring, as I stood there, a sudden vibration of duty and courage. I say courage because I was beyond all doubt already far gone. I bounded straight out of the door again, reached that of the house, got in an instant upon the drive, and passed along the terrace as fast as I could rush, turned a corner, and came in full sight. But it was in sight of nothing now. My visitor had vanished. I stopped, almost dropped, with the real relief of this, but I took in the whole scene. I gave him time to reappear. I call it time, but how long was it? I can't speak to the purpose today of the duration of these things. That kind of measure must have left me. They couldn't they couldn't have lasted as they actually appeared to me to last. The terrace and the whole place, the lawn and the garden beyond it, all I could see of the park were empty with a great emptiness. There was shrubberies and big trees, but I remember the clear assurance I felt that none of them concealed him. He was there or was not there. Not there if I didn't see him. I got hold of this, then, instinctively, instead of returning as I had come, went to the window. It was confusedly present to me that I ought to place myself where he stood. I did so. I applied my face to the pane and looked, as he had looked, into the room. As if, at this moment, to show me exactly what his range had been, Mrs. Gross, as I had done for himself just before, came in from the hall. With this, I had the full image of a repetition of what had already occurred. She saw me as I had seen my own visitant. She pulled up short, as I had done. I gave her something of a shock that I had received. She turned white, and this made me ask myself if I had blanched as much. She stared, in short, and retreated just on my lines, and I knew she had then passed out and come round to me, and that I should presently meet her. I remained where I was, and while I waited I thought of more things than one, but there's only one I take space to mention. I wonder why she should be scared. So, everybody knows Henry James is a wordsmith, and he has a way of, making a story amazing. But The Turn of the Screw is definitely my favorite work of his. And The Stranger by Albert Camus. We read a couple novellas in the last class that I was talking about. One is The Woman Lit by Fireflies, and the other was Goodwill. And they really showed me kind of how the novella works, in relation to it being in between a short story and a novel. And I'm really excited to read more novellas to learn more about the art. I really agree with the stuff that we learned from McEwen this week and how it might be the perfect size and, representation to do a story. I also am really interested in screenwriting. And there's not a lot of novellas that have been made into to screenplays. I know that The River Runs Through It is one that I'm considering reading as our choice this course, but with so many options, I don't know what I'm going to do. But either way, I think the novella is something that's going to be really interesting for me to study, as a medium between short stories, which freak me out, and novels, which are really long and tedious. So I look forward to working with you all again. I'm so glad to see all these familiar faces and our professors, and I'll see you in the discussion this week. Also, I really like doing videos. I really encourage you guys to try videos in your actual discussions. Sometimes it takes the pressure off a little bit to have to, make sure your grammar's right and all that kind of stuff. And talking it out can sometimes make you understand and think different things than you might have if you had written it. So you will see my face a lot this quarter, and I hope to see your guys's, and have a great week. Thanks.